Hello everyone, welcome to our second Python video. In this video, we are going to be covering valid variables, Python keywords, casting, and comments. First let's start with variable names. So valid variable names in Python is exactly the same as it is in C or C++. They can start with underscores, so I can say under equals, 5. They can start with capital letters like this, and I can say under times 5, or under to the power of 2. Yeah, let's do that. And they can start with lowercase variables, and they can have underscores in between them, just like in C and C++. And for the lulz can be a string called lulz. Okay, so as long as you follow these rules, you should have valid variable names. Again, they can start with underscores, undercase letters, and lowercase letters. Right, but the variable in its entirety, and actually I can call this total 87, right? So underscores can start with, variable names can start with underscores, capital letters, and lowercase letters. And they can contain underscores, lowercase and capital letters, and they can also contain numbers. Right. So variable names in Python cannot start with numbers. It's illegal. One thing they may have noticed in the previous video is that when I typed print, it was highlighted. That's because print is a keyword. Okay? And keywords are highlighted in various colors. So one of them is print, and this is a function call that's part of Python. But let's talk about some others. We also have false, none, true, and class. Finally is, oops, this did some auto correcting. Return, continue, for, lambda, try, I'll try to correct that for me. We'll fix that later. Def, from, while, with, or, if, elif, which is the Python equivalent of saying else if, else, as, break, except, in, pass, import. So these are a whole bunch of Python keywords here. There's a whole list of them, right? But a lot of these are going to be purple colored. Well, there'll be one color. There'll be a different color than the normal text that you have, right? But these are just a series of Python keywords. We'll cover most of them. We will not cover all of them in these series of videos, but here's how we start. Okay, so the next thing that I want to cover is going to be casting. So casting is important because sometimes you want to cast from different data types into other specific data types. So under right now is an integer, and if I wanted to, I could cast it to a float. So I can print it, and the way I'd like to do that is to say float, and it will cast it to a float. So we'll cast the variable under as a float. So let's see how that looks. Gives me 5.0, which is expected. So something else that I can do too is I can cast an integer to a string as well. So I can play, and I can type str to cast it as a string under. Right, so if I run that, well, it prints 5 like normally, but we can treat it like a string. And we can actually go in between. So if I'd like to, and I'm just going to play with variable names here, I can print a floating point value, which we'll say 45.6, as an integer. And I can do the same thing by casting it as a string as well using str. So 45.6. So if we run that, well, if I cast 45.6 as an integer, I should just get 45. And if I cast it as a string, well, it should appear the same. So what happens if I, here in this example, I go from an int to a float? Int to a float and a int to a string. Here I go from a float to an int and a float to a string. Now let's go from a float. Well, let's see. Here we'll go from a string to a float and a string to an int. So we'll say int, and we'll say 25. And we'll go from float of, we'll get creative with 25.0. Actually, we can just do, let's do 25.0. So if we run that, they're converted to numbers as they should be. And I can get rid of this and convert it to a string, to a float, and they'll still have the same response. Right. So this is really great. And when we come across other data types, we can actually convert them as such. This we'll cover in the future, but if I'd like to, I can say list 55, and it'll convert it to the list data type. Oh, well, that's all right. We'll cover that in another lecture. The last thing I'd like to talk about is comments. So, like C and C++, we have single line comments, which are done by the pound sign. This is a single line comment. Now, if we want to do multiple lines, we have two options. We can either do 3 single quotes, so I can say this is a multi-line comment. We can also use double quotes as well, as shown up here. But let's fill this out a little bit. This is a multi-line comment. Okay, so in review, we have valid variable names, which can contain underscores, numbers, capital letters, and lowercase letters. However, valid variable names must start with underscores, lowercase letters, or capital letters. There's also a variety of keywords out there in Python. Please take a look at the different keywords that are out there because they're very important. And variable names cannot be keywords. We also have casting, where we can take one data type, let's say an integer, and cast it as a different data type, such as a float or a string. We also have single line comments, which are denoted with the pound sign. And we also have multi-line comments, which are denounced by 3 single quotes, a pair of 3 single quotes, so 6 single quotes in total, and pairs of double quotes, which are 6 double quotes in total. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.